My name is Amy Sherman, and I have a new book out called Agents of Flourishing, Pursuing Shalom in Every Corner of Society. And the Q folks titled this breakout session, People of Peace, I think, because of that title. This book is about how we as believers, both individually and corporately, can be agents of shalom, or people of peace, who contribute to the flourishing of their communities. On the one hand, it's a very positive book because it tells a lot of stories about what Christians in the past and some churches today are doing in terms of bringing greater shalom into their communities. I hope the book will be a big encouragement to believers. We're just reminding us all of the rich legacy of the Christian church and the enormous contributions it has made over the centuries to human flourishing. I especially want young Christians who feel disillusioned with the church or who feel that the church is irrelevant or that it is tone deaf to the issues of the day. I want young Christians to be encouraged by the contemporary stories that I tell about how different churches are addressing educational inequities or advancing restorative justice, pursuing racial reconciliation in their communities, seeking to promote the arts and to advance creation care. So on the one hand, it's a positive book with lots of fun stories. On the other hand, it does voice a lament, which is simply that these positive stories I tell about churches today are unfortunately not the norm. These churches are kind of outliers. I desperately wish that that wasn't the case, but it is the case that these churches really are not the norm. I have to honestly report that. In short, despite the fact that there are hundreds of congregations, maybe thousands even out there, who have the capacity to do the kinds of things that I showcase in the book, they're simply not doing them. We have in the churches of America an enormous amount of latent capital, financial capital, human capital, social capital that has not been activated for the common good. My hope is that my book could play a little bit of role in providing some inspiration and some instruction to change that. I do find myself encouraged by younger church pastors and planters because they tell me that they want their churches to be Jeremiah 29:7 churches. That text, of course, is familiar to many of us. It's the text where God calls his people who are in exile in Babylon to pray for and seek the peace and prosperity, the shalom of Babylon. And that charge by God may have sounded a bit strange to the Israelites, given that God was asking them to work for the good of their pagan neighbors who were their enemies. But really, the whole Old Testament is filled with this theme of God calling his people to be his hands and feet in the world, to honor and glorify him by pursuing shalom in every corner of society, to glorify God by being salt and light in the world, loving their neighbors comprehensively, pursuing spiritual, relational, economic, physical, mental shalom for themselves and for their neighbors. So I love it when I hear these young pastors saying, we want to be a Jeremiah 29:7 church. But of course, that does beg an important question, which is, well, what does a flourishing community actually look like? How should we be thinking about how to advance the shalom, the peace and prosperity of our communities? Well, personally, I have found a framework from the Thriving Cities group called the Human Ecology Framework to be a really helpful tool when it comes to answering that question. This framework argues that in order for a community to be truly flourishing, it needs to be strong in 6 realms or domains of society. And the Thriving Cities group calls these 6 domains community endowments. And they are the good, the true, the beautiful, the just and well-ordered, the prosperous, and the sustainable. The good, the realm of social mores and ethics. The true, the realm of human knowledge and learning. The beautiful, the realm of creativity and aesthetics and design. The just and well-ordered, the realm of civic life and politics. The realm of the prosperous, economic life and economic institutions. And the realm of the sustainable, the realm of human and natural health. Flourishing in each of these community endowments is necessary if a community as a whole is truly to thrive. And as I studied what the scriptures had to say about human and community flourishing, I saw an enormous amount of resonance between what the Bible has to say about flourishing and this framework's conception of flourishing in these 6 domains. I mean, think about it for a minute. God obviously cares about work. He called us into work and creates work, so he cares about economic life. God made us creative beings like himself and gave us various senses. He cares about the realm of the beautiful and the aesthetic life. God made us intellectual beings and gave us curiosity. He cares about the realm of the true, the realm of knowledge and learning. And God is a God of justice who wants societies to be ordered in such a way that human dignity is preserved. He obviously cares about the realm of the just and well-ordered. And as I did research on the book, I was encouraged to learn that throughout the church's history, Christians and coalitions of Christians and congregations have been both thought leaders and pioneering implementers in each of these 6 domains of society. Let me share just a couple examples about that in light of our relatively short time. Let's think about, for example, the community endowment of the good, this notion of advancing ethical convictions and practices that strengthen the fabric of a community. Well, Christianity has among its various convictions the doctrine of Imago Dei, the idea that every single human person on the planet, that every single person in a community is made in the image of God and possesses inherent dignity and unique talents. And that never should society oppress or abrogate that human dignity in each person. So this was a message that the early church proclaimed in the midst of the Roman Empire. And the culture of the day denied this fundamental truth. In the Roman Empire, really it was only Roman male citizens who had inherent dignity and human rights. Everybody else was a second or a third or a 10th class citizen, or even not a citizen at all. So for example, women had very few rights. Widows were not allowed to own property. Young girls could be forced into marriage. People that broke the Roman law would have their faces branded the way that we would brand an animal to mark them as criminals. So in all those practices, we see that the Roman Empire wasn't valuing the dignity of the human person. And yet here was the Christian church proclaiming loudly and clearly that message. And not just giving voice to it, but incarnating it, embodying it, so that widows were given places of honor in the congregation. The church fathers railed against the gladiatorial games because of the way that they demeaned human personhood and human dignity. They also lobbied against the practice of face branding. And individual Christians, because of the Imago Dei, really valued children. And as a result, they adopted unwanted Roman children, and they started orphanages for abandoned children. So those are just some thoughts of how Christians have contributed to the realm of the good. Let's think about the sustainable, the realm of human and environmental health. I think a lot of young Christians today don't appreciate really how the church has been a strong contributor to this particular community endowment. The church has contributed really important foundational ideas, the idea of God's ownership over all things, the notion of the intrinsic value of the creation, the concept of general revelation, by which we say that the Lord's glory is infused in the creation that he has made. And these ideas have positively influenced humankind's interaction with the natural environment. And again, these convictions gave rise to specific actions and practices. And so, for example, we see the medieval monks being very intentional about creation care and the way that they would pursue farming and how they really were environmental conservationists. Here in our country in the 17th century, the Puritans, out of their Christian convictions, set aside woodlands and tried to preserve soil for future generations. And when they designed a town, they would have green common spaces for everyone to enjoy. And if time permitted, I could tell you many, many more stories of how the church and how, again, individual believers or groups in past centuries have strengthened these various realms. And I think that recalling that rich legacy of how the church has contributed to the betterment of human society is a really important exercise, particularly at this time when we feel, as Christians in modern day America, a sense of exile. There's this kind of vibe around that says, well, the church really hasn't ever done anything good. It was just the Crusades, and there's been a lot of sexual abuse scandals. And, of course, it's absolutely true and absolutely depressing that the church has indeed made many mistakes, many grave errors, has committed many terrible sins. It's certainly the case that we have toxic churches and we have hypocritical Christians. But those have never been the whole story of Christianity and culture. And in fact, I would argue that the contributions to human flourishing and to the good and to justice made by Christians over time have far outweighed the bad and the mistakes that the Christian church, certainly has done. But the main reason that we should reflect on this legacy is not to just sort of make us feel better when the church is being beaten up by criticism. The main reason we should think about this legacy of how the church has contributed to human flourishing and community flourishing is because it reminds us of what we are here for. It reminds us of God's mission to extend his kingdom of shalom into every corner of our societies and his call for us to join him in that mission of shalom. And I think this human ecology framework can help us live into this call of Jeremiah 29:7 by giving us some handholds for that work of community flourishing. It reminds us of the comprehensiveness and the diversity of the labors before us. And I think it can be a helpful guide to us as individuals and as congregations as we think about sort of where to invest our efforts. For example, if a congregation is particularly populated by a lot of people who work in the healthcare field, that may be a clue that God wants that congregation to especially focus its efforts in community ministry in the realm of the sustainable. Or if the church is filled with educators, that its best and most strategic contribution might be something in the realm of the true. Well, King Jesus has indeed called us to be people of peace, agents of flourishing, joining him in this mission of extending shalom into every corner of society. And importantly, that call is not supplemental, it is not incidental. It is central to our faith. It is central to the church's mission and to her identity. And I believe that God has placed into our hands what we need for living into that mission. But those assets cannot be allowed to sit dormant. They have to be activated, unleashed, and then intentionally and strategically deployed across these realms of the good, the true, the beautiful, the just, the sustainable, and the prosperous. And my hope is that readers of this book and you listening to this will be advocates and champions of that, and that you'll thoughtfully consider how your own particular assets and the unique assets of your congregation can be strategically and effectively deployed for the peace and prosperity of your community. Thank you very much.